the most crime infested, drug ridden street on town certainly affected the gated community all the way across town. And yet those of us in society, we know that many people think of themselves in silos, that things don't connect. And so I wanted to start off with that because that was actually my entry. And so I had the privilege to work with Dr. Peter Singhi and his team, author of The Fifth Discipline, back in my 20s. So I'm a little more seasoned now, right? Here I am 25 years later. And we did so much work with that group that we were actually featured in the Fifth Discipline Field Book, which was the follow-up book to the Fifth Discipline. Now, why is all of this important? It's because I've spent a lifetime now. The notion of systems thinking is important to us all, but many people don't understand it. And I have two goals here tonight. One is to have you understand how the system works, and two, why it's important to your life and how to navigate around it. And it's important to understand what the discipline is. And so I've spent a lifetime of taking this very big subject and making it easier to understand for the average human being. And so if you would, the first half of our time together today will be us talking about some of the mechanics so that I can then bring it to life and answer your questions there in the second half. So let's break the system, Maria, as you're saying it. Absolutely. And that's what this time is. So let me lay down a few basic concepts to start with. The first thing is that we want to think about what I call zooming in. We zoom in to see the details. We see the bugs on the trees. We see the leaves. We see the light. We see the details of the trees, okay? And we zoom in and we see the details. And then it's important that we also zoom out. And see the bigger picture. And so I want to ask those of you that are online tonight, what are you better at? Are you better at zooming in to see the details or zooming out to see the bigger picture? Because everyone has a tendency to one or the other. And it's important for us to know that we tend to lean towards one or the other, but we can, in fact, teach ourselves to do both. So let me ask you, are you better at zooming in, seeing the details, or zooming out, seeing the big picture? Because I want to show you this evening why people operate in systems the way they do. Very, very important for us to understand that, because thank you, I've got someone here zooming in. I find a lot of people tend to zoom in a great deal of detail. Then there are those that zoom out. And what I want you to know is there's great value in both. So at the very core, basic systems thinking, it is about being able to zoom in and zoom out and understand the relationship between the two. Both are vitally important. But the world, the matrix, counts on us only zooming in. And that is why so many people are stuck. And so what I'll do for the next bit of time, there's no accident when your path and my path crosses. I've been doing this for a very long time. And I find that there's always a reason why someone has crossed our paths at a certain time. And so if you would, before we go into this, I'd like you just to close your eyes. And I want you to breathe in with me. And breathe out. And as you're breathing in again, I want you to understand and trust that you'll take away whatever is important for you to take away here on this day, at this moment, on your personal journey. And breathe out. And as you take in that last breath, I want you to relax your jaw and relax your tongue. And I want you to have complete confidence to know that whatever it is that you need to know for this particular session, for the path on your journey, is going to become abundantly clear for you. Now, take a look at this particular illustration. It's a domino illustration, and it shows that cause and effect are far removed in space and time. The issue is that whoever pushes the first domino, it takes a while for that last domino to fall. And typically that person is promoted or gone by the time the last domino falls. Rarely do we have a chance to actually see the final results of our decision. Now, many times when I'm brought in for any situation, whether it's coaching, whether it's helping a company move forward, whether it's an organization that's struggling with an issue, whether it's an individual that's trying to make change in their life, I am often told, please focus on the red arrow. If you can just fix that domino, everything else will fall into place. But I know from having done this for a very, very long time that the issue is not likely at the red arrow. that it is at the blue arrow, that it is something from a long time ago that we need to slow down and take a look at. Now, why is this important? Because I'm going to refer back to this domino illustration. Cause and effect is far removed in space and time. Part of why people are caught up in what we've come to call the matrix is they don't understand that the things that were put in place a very long time are still influencing our behavior today. I'm going to show you before our time is up, a timeline to show you exactly what's happening. Now, I do want to mention to you, I don't know why the G in the end dropped on this one, but I do want to recommend to you all a video on YouTube, and it's called A Little Film About a Big Idea. And it's a film about systems thinking. You can see what it looks like right there. What's important, thank you, Maria, what's important is that it's talking about knowledge is information plus thinking. Information plus thinking. And we do not do enough as humanity thinking about thinking. We tend to think information and knowledge are almost interchangeable, but that is not the case. And so this video will be a great addition to you after this video, after our time here together, for you to go back and go, wow, let me unpeel, let me have a greater understanding of all the micro decisions that I make on a daily basis, because that's really where our superpower is. Now, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and put in the chat box right quick. What do you see on the screen? I've just shown a picture. What do you see on the screen? Let me give it just a moment to see what people say. What is it that is on the screen there? What is it that is on the screen there? What most people tell me when they see this, and I've shown this to thousands of leaders, is that it is in fact a parrot. It's a bird. They're absolutely convinced that it is a parrot. Well, what if I told you it was not a parrot? Could you see it differently? What if I told you this absolutely was not a parrot? Could you see what is really there? Let's take a look, shall we? Let's take a look together. What this is, in fact, is the winner of the international body painting competition back in 2012, many years ago. It's a woman, Paul, painted like a parrot. Absolutely. Now, the reason this is important, okay, is because most of us, when we look at the image the first time, it looks like a parrot, it's shaped like a parrot, it's colored like a parrot. Therefore, it is a parrot. And we move through life and we make decisions as if it is a parrot, when in fact, it is a woman painted like a parrot. Now, the very thing that makes our brains make quick assumptions like this is a good thing for us. If we've ever driven home from work and our mind is a million miles away, we don't even remember the drive home, right? Okay, that's a good thing. Our brain is used to making decisions quickly. Looks like something, sounds like something, therefore it is something. And rarely do we think about thinking and slow down and realize, it is something else entirely. Now, this is important because I'm going to refer back to it a little bit later in our session together. Now, let me start our journey here together, talking about something that in the systems thinking world is called mental models. Mental models are the lens through which we see the world. They're not right or wrong, good or bad. They simply are. Now, we have mental models about lots of things in life. We have mental models about how to be a parent. We have mental models about how to be a scientist, how to be a citizen, how to be this, how to be that. And what happens is we tend to have lots and lots of lenses that we wear, okay? That's the way we see the world. All right, not a problem until things change. So let's take a look about how that changes. What happens, okay, let's think back to the 1300s, way, way, way back. What did everybody believe about the shape of the world? It was flat. Then supposedly, legend has it, Christopher Columbus comes along, and in the late 1400s, all of a sudden, everyone believed that the world was round. So it begs the question, doesn't it? Did the world change shape? No. What changed? Their belief, their lens about the shape of the world. Now, I'm not even going into the flat earther movement, so let's just stay with me on this one, okay? But see if any of you recognize this particular gentleman. Let's see if anybody remembers who this is. This is somebody back in history that changed the way we thought. Let's see if anybody can remember. I'll give it just a few seconds. All right. This was Roger Bannister, the first human being to run the 4-minute mile, 1951, Oxford, England. Ah, there you go. Thank you very much, Maria. That's exactly who it was. Did you know that the following year, half a dozen other people also ran the 4-minute mile? Which begs the question, did everyone all of a sudden get faster? No. What happened is that their belief system about how fast they could run is what changed. Now, think about it, about what happened with telemedicine. Now, when you talk to healthcare leaders, they will share with you that many, many years before COVID, they tried to launch telemedicine. There was resistance in patients. There was resistance among healthcare personnel. They all struggled with this notion of telemedicine. And then it seems like almost overnight, right? Everything changed. And you will talk to people now, and telemedicine is now the norm. So an entire industry changed the lens of how they saw medicine. And not only did they change, our willingness to change. And so the reason this is important is because mental models are that strong, my new friends. Okay. I'm taking you on a journey, so hang with me. Now, I want you to think back to the day when you were young. What were you told not to do with strangers? You were told not to go in a car, not to go to someone's home. And now we do those things all the time. An entire society changed their lens about these things in one lifetime. In one lifetime. All right. Very, very important to remember. Now, mental models are so strong that entire industries can be stuck. So let's pause for just a moment, and I'll have us just go back face to face so you and I can have a conversation. This notion of mental models is very, very powerful. And so when I go back to this, the reason is because I was there during the days, okay, during the days of back in the days of companies like Kodak, back in the days of companies like Fuji. And I watched as those companies believed there would always be film. I watched them build miles of manufacturing space. I saw it firsthand with my eyes. Early in my career, did I understand that this was what was going on? And then what happened to photography? We all know digital. And just like that, it seemed like the industry changed. Now, here's a very, very important statement for us all to remember, because we are living in a time of dismantling this thing that we call the matrix. Obsolescence can happen in what appears to be an instant. Obsolescence can happen in what appears to be an instant. Okay? Because what happened is I literally had a front row seat watching at that time Kodak go from 65,000 employees down to 2,500. And it was then, as someone very young in my 20s at the time, that I realized just how strong these mental models can be. All right, I'm taking you somewhere here. We have seen, now let's continue on to the next slide. We have seen the same thing happen with music. If you go back to thinking about music, how many of you were jamming to your Walkman just a few decades ago, right? Sony's mental model was the belief, okay, their lens was that the music was about hardware. Apple comes along and their mental model is it was software versus hardware. And we watched an entire industry change. Now, we can go after industry after industry after industry, and we watch how these things are changing. And so let's pause for a moment before I talk to you about the system, because here's the thing. We are all living through an enormous amount of change right now. Some people are handling it well, some people are not. Some people see the writing on the wall of what's changing. Others are completely clueless. And part of the reason why I said I would come on here is because I so much was inspired to want to and share with you this information about systems, because many of you at this time in life are the ones who are going to be the change makers. You are the ones, in fact, breaking the old matrix and inviting in the new. And that means that we're going to be literally taking our old glasses and we are going to be ripping them in half and saying no more. I am not operating this way. And so we are literally, not only do we have to be aware that we have the glasses, but we're literally taking them off. And collectively, we are deciding we are not doing this anymore. And we're putting on an entirely new lens. Okay, that's what this is about. So let me keep going here, because that's a mental model. And then before I continue, I need you to understand how the system works. So let me show you something. Any system that is built from the beginning, the very first thing that happens is that the tangible parts of the system come into play. These are the things that you can touch and see, okay? And you can see them. So every single system, whether you're building a new school, building a new manufacturing plant, building a new city, building a new industry, there are tangible parts of the system. And then there are intangible parts of the system. The things that we cannot touch or see, but we know they exist. Change, trust, morale. And then what happens is, as that system is maturing, you then begin to see the interactions. And so when I do this with leaders, I literally ask them to draw what affects what. And every single time, it always looks like this. Now, please understand that being the seasoned one that I am, I have now seen tens of thousands of leaders map out their system. These are leaders of the system that map it out. And every single time it looks like this. Now, most people will tell me, okay, when they're looking at this system, they're saying, Kim, that is not our system. This is our system. To which I would tell them that is an illusion, because all those boxes and all those silos that we work so hard. So just like Maria said, here's the thing, is that I want to go back to this one here. We don't like things that look messy. I want you to breathe through this with me, because this is really important. Because right now, the dismantling of what we have come to call the matrix and the rebuilding of the new systems that are coming in place, it looks and feels messy. It looks and feels messy. Now, my friends, what I want to invite you just to understand, okay, is that if I were to ask you who is in control of this system, people tell me everyone. People say, well, we are, or the leaders are, or the people are. And I would say to you that one of the first important thoughts for you to really internalize is that no one is in control of the system. Breathe through that with me. No CEO, no president, no organization, no one is in control of the system. Now, before you start to fret just a bit, there's actually great power in that, because I'm going to show you how we can influence the system, but not necessarily control it. So I have these conversations with leaders all the time, and they're always telling me that this is their system. And I am saying, oh, that's an illusion, my friends. What happens is that with your system, it's what we cannot see that matters most. You see, we can't see the arrows. Now, if I had more time, I would give you a mathematical equation for how all those arrows happen, but I'm going to focus on the most important things for us tonight, and that is the system. Now, what happens, this is really important, is I'm taking you on a journey. It does not matter what system you're part of. Science, technology, government, healthcare, medical, manufacturing, whatever, education, whatever system that you are a part of. What has happened? Absolutely. It's very similar, Steve. It goes a little bit higher in the direction that I'm going here, because this is how we're going to influence the system. What happens is the system actually roars to life. Please look at this image. I started to have an artist illustrate these things because leaders weren't understanding, okay, how the system roars to life. I actually encourage leaders to name their system, and I would encourage you to name yours. I call mine George. So every single system has a living, breathing life of its own. It has a consciousness. This is vitally important, my friends, because when we talk about influencing the system and beginning to change the systems, it is important to remember this phrase: we are going to dance with change. But we cannot dance with change if we don't understand that each system has a life of its own. So if you are in the science system, then I want you to name it. If you are in the technology system, I want you to name it. If you are in the power system, in the educational system, I want you to name it. Because then you're going to begin to understand that that system, okay, has a life. Now, what's important to remember is that what happens with systems is that when we first enter the system, so let's say you became an electrical engineer 35 years ago, you, much like a parent of a toddler, okay, we would parent a toddler with a certain lens because we know how a toddler needs to be parented. We would not parent a teenager the same way we parent a toddler because we have immediate feedback. So our lens changes as we parent. But here's what happens to many of us in systems is that we actually enter a system with a certain lens and then don't realize that the system has changed by this time and that there's another way for us to operate. And so what we as society are stuck in is this notion of control. We keep putting anchor and anchor and anchor on these systems to where the systems almost cannot even maneuver. Okay? The systems cannot even maneuver. Now, I know these are big concepts and I'm taking you on a journey. And the nice thing about this video and signing up for Steve's membership here is that you'll be able to go back and see this often. I recognize that these are big subjects, but they are vitally important because I'm about to share with you why we are stuck in the matrix. What happens with our systems is everywhere we turn, all of us have added more and more and more bureaucracy to the point where our systems almost can't function. And so what happens is that we then each day, we have a choice to make about where we invest our emotional bandwidth. Emotional bandwidth, two very important words for all of us, because as we're going through this phase, you and I signed up to be here at this time, and we're here to actually introduce change to humanity in whatever role that we're in. Some of you are within systems, some of you are outside of the systems, but no matter where we are just navigating this, we have a choice about where we want to invest our emotional bandwidth. What I want you to do is to start preserving your emotional bandwidth very carefully. Because now that you understand that the system has a life of its own, you know not to overreact every single time. Because right now I see people waste their emotional bandwidth on two things. The first thing they waste their emotional bandwidth on is searching for a hero. Here I am to save the day, standing on the bedrock of knowledge with a shield of strategy and a sword of execution. And understand that is for both men and women. We either waste our emotional bandwidth looking for a hero or trying to be a hero. My friends, there are no such things as heroes. Breathe through that with me, okay? There are no heroes. It is an illusion. Okay, it is an illusion. Now, remember, we're not looking to be heroes. We're looking to influence the system, which is where I'm taking you. Now, if we're not wasting our emotional bandwidth on looking for heroes, we're searching for who's to blame. Who did this? Whose fault is this? Who should we blame for this? And we watch it all the time. Go right and left and right and left. And we see so much emotional bandwidth looking for someone to blame. There is no single person or system to blame. Okay? Once you understand this, you begin to really detach from the drama. And I'd like you to remember that phrase, detach from the drama. All systems have a certain amount of drama. And so what's happening now that you and I are at this point in time is that we have to say, okay, do I allow myself to get sucked into the drama? Do I try to be the hero? Do I try to look for someone to blame? Or do I learn how to dance with change and navigate the system? And that's where I'm taking you next. Because what I'm about to show you is the closest thing that I have found to a crystal ball. And it is, I have been through so many different management theories. I have worked with so many different people on personal levels, on corporate levels, and I have found this, and personally myself, to be the most impactful. So I'm going to take you through 4 different levels of thinking that we have available to us whenever we want to influence the system and begin to change our lives. All right. Now, there is the hero's journey, Lucy, and I honor that, but so many people aren't quite on the hero's journey as much as they're looking for heroes. So I certainly recognize that. So let's go into the 4 different levels of thinking, shall we? The first level is the events level of thinking. This is like random dots on a graph. It feels very chaotic. It feels very random. This happens, this happens, this happens. It feels like firefighting. I added teeth to the E because events can eat you alive. You literally can feel like you are being sucked in. You ever had a plan for your day only to have it completely shot within a matter of just a few hours? That is the events level of thinking. It is a very powerless place to be. Very important to remember this. Now, there's this next level of thinking, the patterns level of thinking. This is where we begin to connect the dots. We don't fret if we don't have money at the first of the month because we know we don't get paid to the middle of the month. We don't fret if something doesn't happen until this quarter because we know it usually happens in the second quarter. So we begin to get a little bit more ease about how we deal with the patterns level of thinking. All right. These 2 levels of thinking is where most people are. Hang with me as I show you where many of others that you want to call, if you want to call them dark, if you want to call them orchestrators of the matrix, if you want to call them those that not with not so good intent, if you want to call them whatever name you want to call them, I want to show you where they're operating. Because then you have the level of the structures level of thinking. This is anything tangible or intangible that drives behavior. I'm going to give you a whole series of different structures. It becomes very, very predictable. And then you've already been introduced to this word, the mental models. All right. 4 different levels of thinking. I want to be really, really clear that all 4 levels are important to us at any given time. What's important is that we know which level of thinking that we use. Now, hang tight. Because what I have discovered is that there is a dotted line in between these 2 sections. A dotted line. Very, very important. Because I've come to learn that people who live at the events and patterns level of thinking live in what I've come to call the zone of drama. The zone of drama. It always happens to them. It's always somebody else's fault. Okay. Now, we have a large portion of the population right now that's living here because of the way things are built. And it feels like a lot of drama. Some people begin to lose, begin to lose their oomph to try to navigate because they keep getting sucked down into the events and patterns. Now, it's designed this way. It's designed this way. Because what happens when you're living at that top 2 levels is that you're living in the zone of creation. That's where the power lies, my friends. Structures and mental models. And so I'm going to go into more detail there because many of you listening to these kinds of broadcasts, you are the ones in the driver's seat of creating new systems. And it is going to be important to you that you are not wasting your precious emotional bandwidth on events and patterns, and instead you are lifting up and you are looking at structures and mental models. That is where the leverage is. Because when we're analyzing this, what we do is we analyze up and then we begin to make change down. Okay? We begin to make change down. Now, here's what happens. Is that people who are living in that zone of drama, which is a large majority of the population, they get really, really stuck on events and patterns, events and patterns, events and patterns. This is what we've come to call is the problem-solving treadmill. I want you to think about this in your life. The problem-solving treadmill. Now, what happens in a problem-solving treadmill is that it is all we can do to get through the day. To get through the day. Okay. Frameworks, John, if you can give me a little bit more detail, I see that in the chat box. If you have a methodology about a framework, you would end up, I would call that a mental model, but I want to be sure that I'm talking about this in reference. Now, the reason this is so very, very important, okay, let me show you something right quick. I'm going to ask to go to full screen because I want to show you something here. I Now that you've all seen the 4 different levels of thinking, events, patterns, structures, mental models, I want to remind you here of a slinky. Any of you remember slinkies when you were a kid? Okay, I'm going to hold this here so you can see it. What caused that? What caused that? All right, what some people say is, Kim, you moved your hand. What other people say is, Kim, there was gravity. And you're right on both occasions. You are right. Now, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to watch the marker, okay? Oh, you want me to do that more slowly? What caused this? Some people say, well, Kim, you were holding it differently. And I would say, was I really? Wasn't I grasping the marker and the slinky the very same way? Here's where the difference of those 4 levels of thinking come from, my friends, okay? You can be looking at the very same thing and see what you think is a parrot, but it is in fact a woman painted like a parrot. If you said that what caused the slinky to fall was my moving my hand, you are right, but that is the events level of thinking. If you said what caused the slinky to fall was gravity, you are right, but that is the patterns level of thinking. If you notice, all right, I see this, Maria said that these two were different, okay, because their structure was different. Their structure was different. All right, so hang with me as I go a little bit deeper into this because I'm taking you somewhere. So let's go back to what we just saw on the screen. Okay, we can all be looking at the very same thing and we can see things differently. And this is part of why I'm having this session here today, is to have you understand that as you are looking to break free from the matrix personally, professionally, in your industry, it is very important that you recognize that you want to tap dance into the zone of creation and not in the zone of drama. They are keeping us very, very busy with the zone of drama. So let me continue. Let's pull back up the screen. All right. So here we are, the zone of creation and the zone of drama. Now, remember what I just said is that the system, okay, the systems are about traditional control. I'm about to show you how they put these things into place 50 to 70 years ago. This is very predictable. Cause and effect, far removed in space and time. This has been planned for quite some time. Now, what is happening? What is happening is that many of you are involved with all of these other smaller systems that are beginning to gain traction and break the mold. This is going to be really, really important for us because before, to be perfectly honest with you, anytime we tried to break the mold, it was a little bit like the whack-a-mole that many of us were simply wiped out. Many others that are no longer with us were wiped out. Patents were stolen, trademarks were erased, technology somehow disappeared, right? And so what needs to happen now? This is the journey that you and I are on, is that as we continue to have more of these decentralized systems, we will eventually, because of higher consciousness flooding into the earth at this point in time, we're going to be building new systems based on higher consciousness. I want you to breathe that in with me. Breathe that in with me. This is what we're doing. So let me back up here. We've had these big systems that were very, very large that many of us have had to interact with for our entire life. We have been trying and working to build some more of these smaller systems because we knew something deep inside of us, we knew those systems weren't built on integrity. We knew those systems were not built for the highest good of humanity. And then because the systems were so large, and some of them still are, but I'm giving you some hope here because they're changing right now, is over time, this is where we're going. We are going to be the ones who birth these new systems. Okay? I want you to go ahead and claim that right now because the process is already unfolding. I'm going to talk more about this in just a moment, but I want to talk a little bit about structures. You see, what happens is that we cannot solve problems at the same level of thinking that we used when we created them. So when we think about events, patterns, structures, mental models, we need to understand which one that we're at. And the vast majority of people have no understanding of this idea of structures. Structures are anything tangible or intangible that influences behavior. If you want to make it a short sentence, structures drive behavior. Now, there are structures everywhere, and this is what is in the process of changing. Okay? This is what's in the process of changing. Now, structures can be physical. We can see it in the way the buildings are built, the way the room is set up, the way the office is set up, the way the line at the grocery store or the retail store is set up. So structures can be physical. They can be knowledge. It can be the knowledge base, the experience base. We have a lot of that knowledge that's actually retiring, and we have new ones are coming around. Structures are everywhere, as Maria said. Structures can be the power structure. We all know firsthand how we are dealing with power structures in so many different industries right now. The power structures are changing. They can be the reward structure. What are we rewarded for? You may remember that Wells Fargo got in trouble a few years ago because they put in a solution. They had needed to open more accounts, and so they put in a reward, say we'll reward employees for opening new accounts, and yet they didn't think through the unintended consequence of the fact that there could be some problems with people opening false accounts. It was very predictable. It did not have to be that way. But the reward structures in every single industry is driving a certain behavior. Very, very important. Obedience is currently rewarded. You are 100% right, Maria. Now, feel free to take a picture of this particular image. This is a list of a variety of structures, because if I had a HoloLens, I would give you a lens and I would have you begin to walk through the world looking for these structures, my friends. Because if you and I can step out of the zone of drama and into the zone of creation, this is where the power shift is going to begin to happen. Okay, now we have a new mental model. We know that consciousness is rising. We are all stepping into a new thought process. Not all of us yet. This is why they call it the awakening of humanity. We have a new lens. And that lens, in order to make change, means that we want to operate at that zone of creation. We don't want to be in the zone of drama. Now, we'll still see the system do its thing. Remember, we just named the system. If you need to name your world system, then go right ahead. But you want to operate in the zone of creation. And that is my invitation to you here today, is that if your path and my path is crossed, is to make a conscious decision to operate in the zone of creation. Because this is how we are going to change the matrix. This is how we're going to break what we've all come to accept as normal, when you and I both now know it is anything but. Now, please understand that all 4 levels are important. If I have a headache and I'm at the events level of thinking, I have a problem and I need a solution, I will take an aspirin. Great. If I am at a patterns level of thinking, I'm still going to take that aspirin, okay? But I might ask myself, do I get a headache every time Steve calls me? Nothing but love, Steve. If I have a headache and I'm at the structures level of thinking, I'm still going to take an aspirin. I might still ask myself the question about Steve, but I'm going to say, maybe I'm not eating enough, and I get a headache every day at 3 o'clock. Maybe I need to have more lunch. Maybe I need to have my eyes checked and get new glasses. I'm going to begin to operate differently, okay? And if I am at the mental models level of thinking, I'm still going to do all of those things, but I'm going to sit down and have an honest conversation with myself to say, maybe I have a belief system, a lens that says I need to take care of everybody else instead of taking care of myself. All right. So what it is, it's the same problem, but the way we approach it. Remember, it could be a parrot or it could be a woman painted like a parrot. This is why it's so vitally important for those of you watching videos like this. You are change makers. You are deep thinkers. We are in need of people like you that can begin to go through society and say, oh, that's a mental model. Oh, that's a structure. Oh, this. And begin to understand how you are being, okay, sometimes manipulated, or sometimes how you want to opt out of these systems. Now, Our stress level changes based on where we are. If we are at a traffic jam and we're at the events pattern of thinking, okay, we're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm going to be so late for my event. What am I going to do? And our frustration goes up. We get all into the drama. If I'm at the patterns level of thinking, I'm going to try to outwit the lanes and see, oh, this lane's going faster than that. And I'm going to try to outwit it because it makes me feel like I'm more in control. Remember, control is an illusion. We want to dance with change, not control change. If I'm at the structures level of thinking, I'm going to eventually see what caused the accident or what caused the construction delay, and I'll be a little bit relieved because now I understand that it'll be over soon. Or maybe if I have a mental model that says, I'll get there whenever I get there, it doesn't really matter to me. That's something else entirely. Now, as I mentioned to you about the slinkies, what's important is I really wish all of us could go through life with something like this, where we had this headset, okay? We had this headset where we could literally begin to say structure, 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 structure. My new friends, when you begin to look through the world through these lenses that I'm sharing with you here today, you will become acutely aware of which structures are driving which behavior. And you will never blow past structures again. Because many people think it can't be that simple. Oh, it can. It can. We all live through what happens even when something as simple of a structure as a little piece of cloth. What it does to us, right? Structures drive behavior. People who want to manipulate the human population are operating in that zone of creation. All they have to do is keep us there. All they have to do is keep us there. Now, please understand that every single system that we interact with, so we have here the academic system on the left, we have the healthcare pharmaceutical system on the right. Every single system has a personality of its own. Political system on the left, law enforcement there in the middle, military system on the right. Okay, we have the religious system. We have the technology system. We have the media system. We could name system after system. I have been listening to the heartbeat of systems for my entire career. And here is what I know, is that many of these systems are in cardiac arrest or very close to it. You see, there was a gift that was given to us during COVID that we're all beginning to realize what we want to do with it. And that gift is that for the first time, we all became acutely aware of what systems were out there. What do you mean there's not enough gas at the gas tank? What do you mean I can't get money out of the bank? What do you mean that there's not? Exactly, Mr. John. What do you mean the shelves at the grocery store are not stocked? So what we're watching is that what happened before COVID, as the systems had a life of their own, they had so many anchors on that they became really, really heavy, okay? And then we all lived through what we lived through, and then the system's starting to break down. Now, we've watched some bounce back, and we've watched others that are really struggling. Many of you that are inside these systems, you know firsthand which systems are about to go into cardiac arrest. I've been watching this. All I have to do is watch the headlines. All I have to do is watch what's being spoken in media, and I can tell you which ones. And so we are living through a time where these systems are going to be fundamentally changing. This does not have to scare us. This actually can be an exciting time if we choose to dance with change and live in the zone of creation, not in the zone of drama. You see the difference, my friends? I want you to breathe with me, because I know these are very big concepts. And so I want to show you that what's happening right now is that the vast majority of humanity live on this left side. They only know of events and patterns. They are completely unaware that there is anything else. Do you think that is an accident? Really? Do you think that is an accident? You see, systems thinkers and even deceivers, they see the system as what you see on the right. They're tap dancing in the zone of creation. Now, I want to bring out a couple of nuances to you here on the screen. Notice on the left, you see how big the word events is? And notice on the right how small the word events is. The events still happen in both perspectives. It's a matter of level of importance. Okay, so I want you to notice that. It's a matter of the level of importance. Now, also notice that there is a DNA strand on both sides. Having done this for as long as I have, I've come to realize that every single organization, every single industry that has a life of its own, I am convinced that our DNA is shaped like a mini ladder because it is an invitation for us as humanity to climb higher. Us as humanity to climb higher. Now, I encourage you to take a picture of this particular slide because there's a lot to be said there. What I want to do is inspire people to begin to tap dance in this zone of creation, because when you do, you will start making choices to opt out of the matrix. You will begin to claim your sovereignty, and you will begin to look for ways that you can step into your power. So remember, I talked about the big system and then a lot of other smaller systems and how eventually a higher consciousness system is going to land. It has to change. There's no other way. There's no other way. Things are changing. It's already in motion. The dominoes are already in motion. Now, what's important to realize is why don't people understand this notion of systems thinking? That's been the question that has bothered me my entire career. I have watched as this discipline of systems thinking has been held hostage in academia. And I have been very suspicious of it for a while. And it wasn't until recently that I actually finally received an answer. And it was when I was reading a book. People will talk all kinds of things about conspiracies, but this particular book was written by John Coleman. It was talking about the Committee of 300. And I looked through the list of the people there, and guess who was there? Many of the people who were considered the fathers of systems thinking. And all of a sudden, the light bulb went on. And I said, aha, they've always wanted us to live in the zone of drama. Our systems are built to keep us in the zone of drama, my friends. Okay. Think about our educational system. Think about the way we have everything segmented. We, as a human being, we are designed to understand the interconnections of all things. So I want to be really clear about that. We have been programmed to see the world the way it is. And so right now, you and I are in a process of stepping out of that, okay? We are giving ourselves and opting in for a new lens. But here's what I want to show you. Here's what I want to show you. When we get ready, I'm going to show you a timeline in just a moment. I want you to take a look at one of the mental models that are driven by academia. Academia, this is a systems model, an illustration of academia. I've worked a lot with academia, and I believe that they're a real leverage point for why things are messed up. This is my personal opinion. I have watched how complexity is a shield for any of the systems, okay? Anything that they wanted to keep us into the zone of drama, they made things more and more and more complex. Whenever we see things that are complex, and you can list out all the things that we already know, when things are that complex, it is a shield for things that are not going right. Everything we need to know can be mirrored in nature. So complexity is a shield. Deception is a family business. I could talk hours for how they're reinforcing feedback loops about why we are trapped. It goes back to academia. There's much truth in that. Now, please understand, this next statement may be somewhat controversial. I have interviewed many, many whistleblowers, and I have talked with many victims of child trafficking. They have given me evidence over and over and over again, and it is their belief system that much of academia, the DNA of academia, is rotten to the core. That our society would be uplifted if we would begin to move away from academia. Now, before you all start sending me chats or sending Steve chats, I want to make something really, really clear. In every single system, there are good people. I want to be really, really clear. The system has a life of its own. It's very different than the people that are in it. Some of our systems have a DNA of thought that were at the very core of its beginning design. It lacked integrity. And many of us have known that. We've known something was wrong. We haven't been able to put our finger on it. Now we're being asked to clean up those and to build new systems that have DNA of integrity. That's what we're being asked for. Okay. That's what we're being asked for. And so as I go through this, I want to show you that this issue of zooming in and zooming out is really important, because I'm going to take you to another screen in just a moment for a 200-year timeline that I put together for the US. So give me just a moment. And when you zoom in, it's very, very easy to keep us, occupied with the events. And so I want to be sure here. So I'm going to zoom out for right quick. This is the whole 200-year timeline. This is something very large. I've been building this for a while. It has a lot of everything from presidents to political actions to a variety of things. When you zoom in, this is what I want to show you, is that as you zoom in, let me make sure you can see it. Okay, as you zoom in, and I can share this with Steve so we can make it available to you, you will see that back in the 1940s and the 1950s, structures were put in place that were going to influence our behavior all these years later. This has been a long-term game for the other side, my friends. Okay, so while we were busy zooming in, so let's zoom in a little bit, let's zoom in a little bit more, let's make it a little more current, and let's go over here to even COVID. So let's zoom in, and let's see right here. Remember this? If we zoom in and we are so caught into the zone of drama that we only are focused on COVID, then that's all that we're thinking about, right? That's all we're thinking about. Let's zoom in a little bit more. We can zoom in so much that that's all we can see. Do you understand what I'm showing you? Do you understand what I'm showing you? The entire matrix is designed to keep us at the events, and if we can, not even looking at the patterns. They want us to only zoom in. It is of vital importance that we all begin to zoom out and see the larger picture. Because when you do, during the time of COVID, what I became acutely aware of as I built this on my back porch is that many of the things that we were dealing with today, those structures were installed back in the 1940s and 50s. It was already in motion back when you and I were very, very busy simply making a living, simply trying to move on. And so what I want to encourage all of you today is that if you are in the science industry, make yourself a timeline like this and map out what happened in the timeline so you can begin to see how your system operates. If you're in healthcare, do the same thing. Whatever system that you are acutely aware of, map this out and then begin to zoom in to see some of the details. Because when you start to connect the dots, all of a sudden you're like, wow, this was put in place a long time ago. And the reason it was, okay, is because we were too busy simply living. And so let me stop sharing that for a moment, stop screen. So I bring this up to all of us here this evening as we're beginning to wind down, is that it's important to understand that the other side of the matrix is they're playing the long game. Now, we have great power. We can begin to influence this, and that's what I want to be really, really clear about, is that we can influence the system when we start making choices and begin to reflect a little bit more about why we are thinking the way we're thinking. How many of those thoughts are things that were given to us or programmed versus the ones that we're choosing. And so as we go through this, there is a book I want to recommend to you. It's called Holonomics. And I met this couple out of Brazil. They're doing an amazing job of trying to have people begin to think a little bit differently and think of more in a holistic kind of fashion. So it's my goal here today is to have you start thinking about thinking. And if I can get you interested in the notion of systems thinking, you're going to be able to walk through the world in a very different fashion. What I want for all of us, no matter what industry you're in, is to begin to direct our consciousness to the higher consciousness systems, to the higher consciousness systems. So John is saying beliefs, philosophies, principles of old structures. John, we could have a whole nother session on that. What was quite startling to me as I watched during COVID is that it's important to understand, folks, that people on the other side are all part of the same system. We think that they're right and left. We think that they're media and government. We think that they're education and manufacturing. They're all the same system, and they have reinforcing feedback loops that continue to keep us mired down in events and patterns. Well, I've spent a lifetime of working my way out of events and patterns and operating my life from that structures and mental models, so I know it's possible to change. What I did learn, John, when I researched this, is that when you really get deep into how those traditional systems worked, is that the deception was a family business. They would have somebody who was in the media and then somebody who was at an academic university. They would have somebody who was here and then another system to reinforce it. So there's quite a bit that's built in. For this short time here together today, and I'll hand it back over to Steve in just a minute, what I wanted you all to realize is that you have far more power than you think you do. Once you see the system, and you stop, make a decision, you choose to say, I will not be a victim anymore. I am putting on the lens of where can I have power? When can I begin to influence the system? When can I stop participating in the system? Because a large number of these systems are operating because we participate in them blindly. Folks, we have far more power than we think we do. So as we go into this notion of higher consciousness. Thank you, John. I am working on some of these. Please know I'm trying to spread this message far and wide, because I believe that once we can see what happens, you want to think this is by accident. Let's talk about a simple structure right quick. You think these phones were an accident? No. These phones sort of keep us all looking down, so we're stuck in events and patterns. What we need now are people who are beginning to look up and have their eyesight. This was designed that way. Every single quagmire that we have ourselves in the matrix was because a structure was put in place to drive that behavior. You see where I'm going, my new friends? Once you begin to understand, I don't think technology is bad. Technology is wonderful. I have it balanced. I make sure that I balance this with making sure I've got freedom for creativity. I balance this with looking out for it. Project Looking Glass, John, certainly that was a fundamental structure that was driving behavior. I could go into a number of the military experiments. Folks, when I go back to this notion around academia and some of the institutions in society that we have been taught, all you have to do is go back to the church committee recordings and the documents from the church committee, and you will find that over 100 of academic and healthcare institutions and other institutions that we have been taught to respect and admire were part of mind control experiments. If we understood that at the level that we did, no one would send their children to any of these universities or these healthcare institutions. Now, let me go back to the point of what I said earlier. Am I saying all of those people are bad? No. I want to be really, really clear about that. What happened is these things often were put in place before many of us were born. See the system, name the system, become knowledgeable of the system, and then make a choice about which side of the system you're going to be. Are you going to be the ones that's propping up the old system that you know is not built properly? Because, folks, when I work with thousands and thousands of leaders, they know. Many of them are leaving systems because they can no longer stomach it. They no longer, at this level of consciousness, can stomach being a part of a system that is tearing humanity down. So this is going to be an issue more and more and more. Those of us that are choosing the higher consciousness path, we will not be able to be part of systems that the DNA of thought of those systems are to harm humanity. And so the exciting thing for people like you and for me is that we're at a choice point. We can make the change. We can begin to build systems with higher consciousness. It's going to take finesse. It is going to take gravitas, and it's going to take awareness. And that is why I've come here with this message here today. And so we need new lenses. We need new lenses. And that's where we are today. And so I'm going to show you my LinkedIn profile in just a moment. And what it is that I want you to remember that as we're all going through this, I want to be sure that we understand that mental models can be like cages to ourselves. I had an artist design these illustrations because I remember what this life was like back when I was 35 and I was trapped. I saw the bars in front of me. I saw the bars to my right. I saw the bars to my left. And I thought that was my life. And I was not aware that there were no bars behind me. That is what is happening right now. There are no bars behind us. And so, of everything that I have said tonight, I want to be really, really clear that you and I are standing, we are the bridge generation. We have one foot in the past and one foot in the future. And I genuinely believe that there is always hope. But for me, hope is an acronym for harness our power every day. Sometimes that means dancing with the systems in place and at the same time creating the new systems. And so you and I have everything we need to know right now equipped to be able to walk this path. And as we have one foot in the past and one foot in the future, which one's going to win is going to depend on which one we focus on. So I come to you this evening. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. I totally agree with you, Davey. So I want to be sure that I'm ending with a notion of all this stuff that I could say so much more about. But what I want you to hear is the resonance in my voice and the belief that there is always hope. And every single system, there are good people that know their system is broken. There are ones that are already opting out. They're already creating new pathways. At the same time that that's happening, many of us are going to need to start making brave decisions about what are we going to tolerate and what are we going to change. Okay? And so as I see Miss Karen there, I can certainly bring the timeline. I'll be speaking with Karen at Tesla Tech in August, and I'll bring that 200-year timeline so that we have that accessible. And Steve, I want to say a gracious thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Well, thank you for being here. And this is a really appropriate talk, tonight. Um, I don't know if people realize it, but the AI, artificial intelligence, is going to be the new bureaucracy because all they'll be doing is doing the same things that the bureaucracy does. Have you felt the same old forms that you ever notice how everything gets standardized? And once it's standardized, then they can computerize it. You know, so I thought it was really a great talk. You know, so I'd like to remind everyone uh, to come to our conference, and Kimberly will be there, and you have a chance to talk to her. We'll have something every night. You can sit down and maybe enjoy a bite with her. August 7th to 11th at the Crown Plaza. We have a 25% discount still. If you sign up 2 people, you get an extra 5%. So, like I say, get signed up now. Reservations are open at the hotel. The information will be on the online, and be sure to sign up. For our YouTube channel here, and don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you like tonight's show. It really helps us on the YouTube there, and I think that's about it. And I'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.